everyone, thanks for checking out another Fretthold Baits YouTube video. It is September and it's time to start thinking about big baits. And I have a lot of big baits already, but I don't have more big baits. So let's make a few big baits. Here we go. So what I'm thinking for this project is essentially just a slightly larger version than my jointed 9-inch Cuda. I just spent the last 2 months making 9-inch Cudas, so my big bait season's actually kind of winding down as far as like what I have going on in the shop. I'm actually making a bunch of my 4-inch piglets, hopefully to have these ready in a couple of months, and then war pigs as well. Even though I'm kind of gearing towards the off season with my production, I'm still thinking about big baits. Here's the lumber that I use. It's a Western red cedar, clear grade. It's a 5/4 board is what I make pretty much all of my Cudas out of and my war pigs. But I do also have it in a thicker 2x4 format, which I think for this project I might have to use. Typically my 9-inch jointed Cudas are made out of this 5/4 board. It has a planed surface on the one side. It actually ends up measuring to exactly 1 inch. If I'm going to make the 9-inch Cuda, 10.5 inches, I do want that thickness just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to have to go with the 2x4. We're going to have to plane that down. If this was like 1 1/4, I would probably go with this. But I think it's going to be just too thin, so we're going to have to plane down this 2x4 and then we'll start tracing stuff out. Alright, I got my lumber plane down. I took it down to 1 3/16, which is perfect. It's just over 1 inch. That's going to give me the girth that I want for a 10.5 inch bait. I took an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, printed out my Cuda profile. I'm going to start cutting these into blocks, and then we can get these ready for cutting out the lip slots. Alright, so now we got 5 identical blocks of wood, all squared up. So in order to set up my lip slot cutting jig, I'm going to first draw a center line down one of these blocks of wood, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this profile and then glue it to the piece of wood. Alright, I already prepped my table by wiping it down with some boiled linseed oil. I switched my blade to a thicker kerf because I'm going to be using 3/16 polycarbonate. And now I just need to set up my crosscut sled. I love using a crosscut sled for making lip slots because once you have it set up, it's repetitive. You can cut these out very quickly by just interchanging the blocks of wood and having your angle set up right where you need it. Now that this is glued, I can look down the bait and see if the blade lines up with where I need it to be. And if not, I can make an adjustment here, which I'm going to have to. Then once this is set up, we'll just cut all 5 of these lip slots. So now I'm just marking on the master template here the location of the eye. I'm going to mark out the weight and front hook hanger location, the middle hook hanger location, the joint location. Once this is all marked out, I'll be able to set up my drill press to do all of this drilling. Once that's set up, then I'll be able to run through all 5 of these blocks and we're all set. Alright, drill press is all set up, just using a fence and this little stop block here. So that's going to be in the same position every single time. And then once I start drilling, I'm going to set my depth, and then that way it'll be completely set up that I could just swap out another one of these blocks and repeat. It's a lot of decision making in like a small moment where it's like, this is really important, and I'm trying to visualize this bait cut out and carved, all of the material taken away, and like how much wood that is. I did step up the Forstner bit on my weight hole. I was thinking about drilling all the way to the midline and stepping up the Forstner bit, but now I'm thinking I don't want to drill all the way to the midline. That stepping up the Forstner bit will compensate for the amount of wood I have going on here. We're going to roll the dice on that depth there. Thinking, hold on. I don't want to bust through this eye socket here. Will that bust through? Depends on how deep these eye sockets are. Alright, so my problem right now is I decided to use the larger eye socket because it's a bigger bait and I want a larger eye. And I wanted to use the larger bit, but there's an overlap here. These eye sockets don't have enough material between them to support that width of a weight hole. If I were to drill that all the way out, in this bottom corner of this eye socket, my Forstner bit would punch through, and that's not good. I'm going to nix the larger Forstner bit. I'm going to go back to the 3/8 Forstner bit for the weight hole. I'm going to drill all the way to the midline. If I don't feel like that's enough, which I think it is, so what I'm going to do is, I already have the larger Forstner bit back into the drill press, and I'm going to set the depth so that it comes just shy of that eye socket. And I already have the smaller Forstner bit drilled all the way to the center line. I'm going to widen that hole, but I'm only going to widen it to the depth that I'm going to be safe from hitting that eye socket. Alright, they're all cut out, drilled out, looking good. Before I start carving, I'm going to mark on the bait the tapers that I want to cut off before I start carving, because this is just a lot of wood to have to remove and then keep it symmetrical at the same time. Alright, ready to start carving. The tapers are cut, and so I'm going to take the spoke shave and just start taking a little bit off the top. looks pretty good. It's going to take a lot of hand sanding to get this to where I want it to be, but I love it so far. So now I'm going to carve out these eye sockets with a Dremel tool and this little burr bit. Alright, there you are, all carved. I think I started carving these around 10 a.m. and now it's about 6 p.m. So this took a while to carve all 5 of these. These were a lot of work. Alright, now that the joints are cut and cleaned up and sanded over, I'm just going to mark these now and then we'll drill them out. I think I found it. And as long as we can thread a wire through, this one's good to go. And my final step before sealing is going to be just adding a little bit of a weight hole into this tailpiece. I like my tailpieces to have just a little bit of keel weight to them. Now all there's left to do is to dip them in a sanding sealer and hang them up to dry. I overfilled this. Alright, I drew up a lip that I think is going to work. Just comparing it to the 9-inch Cuda, looking at the baits next to each other, seeing how much bigger that bait is. I took the lip that I used for the jointed 9, and it's maybe a little bit more than a 1/2 inch longer. The angles that it comes out of the bait are about the same, so it does end up being just a little bit wider, but I think that's going to work. I'm going to cut this out, and then I'm going to fit it in one of the bait bodies and just see how it looks. If it looks good, I will go ahead and trace 5 more and we'll cut those out. And if I don't like it, I'll draw something else up. Alright, we got 5 lips ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and sand these edges and give them my Fretthold baits spit shine. Once they're ready, I will start wiring them up, twist up some hook hangers, and install them into the bodies. And that's exciting. They're going to start taking shape. This is going to be my last step for today. It's been a 14-hour day so far. Burning the midnight oil now. I'm going to do this off camera. Alright, nice and shiny. I prepped them by scuffing up where it's going to be seated in the bait, and I'm going to wire these up and epoxy them into the bodies. Just like that. Ready to go. Now that I get to look at these baits with the lip installed in it, I think these lips are going to be perfect. I think that's a great length for it. The toe point is below the center line of the nose. I think these are going to work out pretty well. I think the action is going to be pretty similar to my 9-inch Cuda, which I'm excited for. I'm hoping that these run really well. Really, the only unknown variable at this point with this batch in particular is the amount of weight that I'm using. There's going to be a lot of weight in this bait. I think it's going to work. Hopefully that is the case. And then also, these lips are a little thicker than I'm used to using. It may posture this bait a little bit nose down, but I think it's going to work. Wiring up these tail pieces is pretty simple. Just take a rod, pliers, make a bend, then I make a loop. Once I have my loop, I grab it with a linesman pliers, and then I just do a big barrel wrap. Then I take it and I just epoxy it right into the tailpiece. The reason I drill out these countersink holes with the Forstner bit is I want to bury that into that tailpiece so only that much is sticking out. Once that sets up, I'll just fill this up with the West Systems epoxy just so that it's level and flush, and then this loop will be a quarter of the way buried. Look how close my weight hole and my eye socket were. I actually did kind of punch through just a little bit. That only happened on one of them. I don't know why it happened on that one and not the others. Really weird. And again with the West Systems epoxy, perfect for filling up through wire channels, hook hanger holes. We'll twist these tail hook hangers up. That way this wrap gets buried in epoxy. I'm just about ready to start coating these with epoxy to get them ready for paint. I'm struggling with a decision here. I feel like I used too much lead in these baits. It's so close. It's borderline. I could absolutely get away with leaving them as is. I just did a float test on this one. It's postured downwards. Once that tail piece is on there, kind of weighing it horizontally, I think it's going to be just fine. They might even just run deep. But it's a lot of lead just holding this front piece. It's just very, very front heavy. I think what I'm gonna do is drill out a little bit of lead with a small metal drill bit and then backfill that with some more epoxy just to lighten these up ever so slightly. It might even be a mistake to take weight out, but my gut is telling me to remove a little bit of lead.
See, even just that feels way better. Just that small amount feels 100% better.
Alright, while we wait for that epoxy to dry, we're just gonna hang out with these little babies. Just want to introduce you guys. Macy. Say hi.
Hi.
Maddie. Say hi. My little muffin. Come here and sit with me. You said boost. This is baby number 1, Macy Jean. Say hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Do you think that epoxy's ready yet? What does the puppy say? What does the kitty say? Ah. Too cute. Since I'm hoping to paint tomorrow, that means I need to get these eyes ready today. So this is how I make my eyes. I have a silicone mold. I pour epoxy. It's an Alumilite Amazing Clear Cast Plus. UV resistant. It doesn't yellow. It stays nice and clear because it is kind of a thicker pour. I'm going to pick 5 patterns now, paint these eyes, have them ready to go for tomorrow. Then after I paint my eyes, I put down a little sheet of foil paper and I'll just kind of drip some epoxy onto it. And I'm just going to epoxy all these eyes down. Then in the morning I'll be able to cut them out, and then I like to scuff them up with a little bit of sandpaper. But this is how I make my eyes. I love how they turn out. Just deep enough that I have a nice flat surface to epoxy the eye onto, but not deep enough that I broke through the epoxy and reopened some fresh unsealed wood. And for sanding these down, I use a 400 grit sandpaper, and all I'm really looking for is to have a nice smooth surface and just remove all of the shine off of the bait. Alright, now that they're all sanded down, I wipe my baits down with a little bit of denatured alcohol just to kind of clean them up, wipe away any contaminants that may cause any issues with adhesion with the primer. And then I'm going to go ahead and tape off everywhere I don't want paint. All taped off, ready for priming, and I like this Rust-Oleum Ultra Cover Primer. It gives me good coverage, it adheres well, and it's pretty tough stuff. I like it. I'll let that dry, and then I'll come back and do one more coat. I already have all 5 of my patterns picked out. They're just kind of staple stuff. I'm not really going to do any improvising on this batch of baits. I'm going to start by giving them all a base coat, and then I'll move on to details afterwards. So, Pink Belly Night Shiner starts with a black back. Alright, before we wrap this one up, let's see if we can get an idea for the action here. Alright, the action is great on these things. I absolutely love it, and I cannot wait to fish them in the fall. It's going to be an exciting fall. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.